Welcome to Truthful Manipulation. In a world where truth is bent, facts are framed, and influence is too often used without conscience, this podcast stands for something different. I'm Dave Kelsey, along with H. Daniel Mujahid, and together we expose manipulation, defend integrity, and help you see clearly in a world determined to confuse you. This week, Daniel's traveling, so I'll be holding it down solo for this episode of Truthful Manipulation. Even though he's not here with me behind the mic today, the mission stays the same: to challenge the surface, question the narrative, and dig deeper into the truth beneath what we're being told. So this week, it's just me walking us through a subject that deserves real thought, real honesty, and real perspective. Let's get into it. There was a time when a man's word mattered because it was tied to his actions. There was a time when promises were not marketing, they were commitment. There was a time when people did not need to tell you how honest they were, how loyal they were, how moral they were, how committed they were. You knew because you could see it. You saw it in sacrifice. You saw it in consistency. You saw it in how they treated people when there was nothing to gain. But now we live in a culture where words have become costumes, where language have become camouflage, and where saying something is often treated like doing something. That's not a minor shift. That's a dangerous one. Because once a society starts rewarding language more than behavior, once it starts rewarding performance more than principle, and once it starts rewarding image more than integrity, then manipulation is no longer the exception. It's become the system. We no longer live in a time where action proves the word. We're living in a time where words are being used to hide the absence of action. And that should scare every one of us. Think about it. Everywhere you look now, people are talking about justice, talking about leadership, talking about compassion, talking about accountability, talking about truth, talking about loyalty, talking about community. Talking. And sometimes the talking is so polished and so emotionally tuned and so strategically framed that people stop and say, well, they must care. No, not necessarily. A polished sentence isn't a proof of conviction. A public statement is not proof of character, and a slogan is not proof of sacrifice. And words without matching behavior are not leadership. They're theater. And that's where we are now. We're drowning in theater. The public relations theater, the social media theater, the corporate values theater, the political theater, the relationship theater, the self-branding theater. Everyone wants to sound right. Far fewer people want to live right. Because living right costs something. Words are cheap. Actions are expensive. Words can be rehearsed. Actions have to be carried. Words can be edited. Actions leave a record. Words can be posted in seconds. Actions may take years to prove. And that's exactly why words become the preferred currency of the age, because they give people the appearance of substance without the burden of substance. Let's tell the truth about this. This didn't happen by accident. This was built. It was built by systems that learned how to profit off appearances. Social media taught people that the right words can create instant identity. Politics taught people that the right phrasing can distract from the wrong behavior. Corporate culture taught people that mission statements can be used to cover moral emptiness. And in everyday life, people learn that if you sound aware enough, sensitive enough, wise enough, compassionate enough, they may never have to actually become those things. That's one of the greatest manipulations of modern society. People have learned how to borrow moral credibility through the language. They speak in the vocabulary of integrity without living under the discipline of integrity. And many people fall for it because words hit us fast. They create emotion quickly. They create impression quickly. They create identification quickly. Action is slower. Action is quieter. Action usually doesn't need to advertise itself. That's why immature societies and emotionally manipulated societies become addicted to language, because language gives the feeling of movement without demanding the evidence of movement. And once people become more impressed with what sounds good than what holds up, truth starts dying in public. One polished speech at a time, one empty promise at a time, one image-managed lie at a time. This episode of Truthful Manipulation is brought to you by the book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. If you're tired of living in a world where appearances keep beating reality, where messaging keeps outrunning truth, and where manipulation is dressed up like wisdom, then this book was written for you. It's designed to help you recognize manipulation, understand how it works, strengthen your ability to live with awareness and integrity. Get the book, read it slowly, underline it deeply, and start seeing what others miss. Because the minute you see manipulation clearly, it loses some of its power over you. Now back to this week's episode. Let's bring this closer to home. This isn't about politicians. This isn't about corporations. And this isn't about social media influencers. This is about everyday life. How many times have you heard somebody say, "I've got your back," only to watch them disappear the minute things get difficult? How many times have you heard, "I care about you," from someone whose actions were filled with neglect? How many times have you heard, "I value loyalty," from people who were already planning their exit? And how many times have we heard, "I'm a person of integrity," from somebody whose choices said exactly the opposite? The issue is everywhere, in friendships, in families, in churches, in businesses, in leadership, in marriages, in public life, in private life. Because when the words become more important than actions, people start learning how to perform virtue instead of practicing virtue. And once performance takes over, trust starts to rot. Not all at once, quietly, gradually, from the inside. And that's what's happening to so many institutions today. They don't collapse first from outside attack. They collapse from internal dishonesty. They collapse when language is used to cover the growing gap between what is said and what is done. The real danger is not just lying. The real danger is building a whole culture where sounding true becomes more valuable than being true. And let me say something else. One reason people now trust words too much is because words are easier to consume than actions are to examine. A statement's easy. A tweet's easy. A speech is easy. A caption's easy. A press release is easy. A slogan's easy. But tracking somebody's patterns, that takes effort. Watching how they act under pressure, that takes action. Comparing what they say today with what they did yesterday, that takes discipline. And most people, sadly, don't want to trust badly enough to do that work. They want the comfort of a good sentence. They want the emotional release of hearing what sounds right. They want to believe the words because believing the words is easier than confronting the contradiction. That's how manipulation survives. It survives because people often prefer inspiration to investigation. They prefer image to evidence. They prefer emotional agreement to moral examination. And that's why words have become louder than actions, not because actions stop mattering, but because too many people stop checking. And that's the part we have to own. It's not just the speakers became more manipulative, it's also that audience became easier to seduce. And if we're ever going to fix this, we have to recover the courage to ask harder questions, not, did that sound good, but did that hold up? Not, was that powerful language, but was there powerful follow-through? Not, did they speak with emotion, but did they live with conviction? You're listening to Truthful Manipulation. If this episode's hitting home for you, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And while you're at it, follow the podcast and join us each week as we break down the language, systems, and behaviors that shape the world around us. We don't just talk about what's wrong. We talk about how to see it, how to challenge it, and how to live above it. Because awareness without integrity is dangerous, but awareness with integrity can change a life. Now back to this week's show. Let's go deeper. Why do actions matter more? Because actions carry cost. Words can be spoken without pain. Actions usually require pain. Words can be spoken without risk. Actions usually require risk. Words can be spoken without inconvenience, and actions usually require inconvenience. Anybody can say, I believe in fairness, until fairness costs them profit. Anybody can say, I believe in truth, until truth threatens their position. Anybody can say, I believe in loyalty, until loyalty demonstrates sacrifice. And anybody can say, I believe in courage, until courage puts you in the line of fire. And that's why actions remain the greatest revealer of character. Actions force the issue. Actions remove the mask. Actions truly tell you what a person truly values when comfort is no longer available. Words tell you what people want you to believe about them. Actions tell you who they are when belief is no longer enough. And that's the difference. And in today's world, a lot of people are building identities almost entirely on what they say. And that's dangerous because it allows people to rent a reputation that they've not earned. It allows people to stand in borrowed virtue. It allows people to sound principled without ever being tested by principle. And if a society keeps rewarding that, eventually the real ones start looking strange. The quiet person who shows up every day. The loyal person who never posts about loyalty. The honest person who does not need a slogan. The servant who does not need a spotlight. Those people start getting overlooked. Why? Because they're not performing. They're doing. And doing does not always trend, but doing still matters. And matters now more than ever. So what's this look like in real life? It means judging more slowly. It means listening less with your emotions and more with your memory. It means asking, what has this person done consistently? What have they built? What have they protected? Who have they stood beside when it cost them something? And what happens when pressure hits? What happens when no one's watching? That's where truth lives, not in polished announcements, not in strategic tears, not in rehearsed outrage, not in choreographed compassion. Truth lives in pattern. Truth lives in follow-through. Truth lives in repeated action over time. Character is not proven in a sentence. Character is proven in a pattern. And that means we need to retrain ourselves. In business, don't just believe what the company says it values. Look at how it treats people when money's on the line. In politics, don't just believe the speech. Track the behavior. Track the alliances. Track the results. In friendships, don't just listen to promises. Watch presence. In family, don't just absorb declarations of love. Watch consistency. Watch responsibility. Watch sacrifice. In leadership, don't just admire charisma. Examine discipline. Because charisma without character is a loaded weapon. And eloquence without ethics is one of the most dangerous forces in any society. Before we close, let me invite you to take this conversation further. At Truthful Manipulation, our message is simple: to help people recognize manipulation, understand it, and respond with truth, awareness, and integrity. If that mission speaks to you, stay connected, read the book, follow the podcast, share the message. Because the world doesn't need more polished deception. It needs more people who can still recognize the difference between what sounds good and what is good. The difference may be the difference between being led and being used. And now back to the conclusion of this week's show. Let me leave you with this. We're living in a time where language is abundant and sacrifice is rare. A time when branding is strong and backbone is weak. A time where public image is often protected more fiercely than private integrity. And in a world like that, you have a choice. You can be impressed by a speech, or you can become disciplined enough to study action. You can be emotionally moved by a sentence, or you can learn to wait for the evidence. You can live at the surface, or you can train yourself to look underneath. Because not everybody who sounds sincere is sincere. And not everybody who sounds moral is moral. And not everybody who speaks of truth serves truth. And not everybody who talks about loyalty understands loyalty. And if you forget that, this world will manipulate you relentlessly. It'll sell you language and call it leadership. It'll sell you performance and call it principle. It'll sell you emotional theater and call it courage. But words alone don't carry moral weight. Words only matter when a life is strong enough to hold them up. And that's where we need to get back to. Back to the harder standard. Back to the deeper test. Back to the older wisdom. Don't just ask what they said. Ask what they did. Don't just ask what they promised. Ask what they delivered. Don't just ask what they posted. Ask how they lived. Because in the end, words may impress people. Words may stir crowds. Words may win applause. And words may shape headlines. But only actions reveal truth. And if we don't demand the truth again, we'll keep being ruled by people who have mastered the sound of virtue without ever carrying its weight. The future doesn't belong to people who speak the best. It belongs to the people whose actions can survive inspection. And that's the standard. That's the challenge. And that's the work. I'm Dave, and this is Truthful Manipulation. Until next week, watch the words, but trust the actions. If you'd like to comment on this week's show, you can do that at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. Don't forget to pick up a copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By. Available on Amazon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at truthfulmanipulation.com and pass this podcast on to somebody that you think would find it useful. Thank you very much for listening to this week's show.